Congress Center is on cue. So when I heard my name called, I thought, they're ready for me. And I'm certainly ready. To come and say a few words to our postal supervisors, and to begin by thanking you for the service you continue to render to the American people under what can only be called hardship circumstances. The burden of supervision must be particularly great today, where you have to keep quality and quantity of service going with fewer and fewer personnel and less budget. You know, of course, that your efforts are not lost on the public. I come from the public, of the Congress, that has record lows of approval in the public. We should wish for what the Postal Service has, the most trusted government agency. That's what the polls show. And that is remarkable, particularly considering what Postal Service workers and supervisors have endured over the last several years. This was a survey, by the way, of government agencies, and the Postal Service is not even a government agency, and yes, you outranked every federal agency. You are, of course, a self-supporting business, and have been so since 1971, that Congress was glad enough to spin off, but has stood in the way of allowing to be a business like every other business in the United States. Perhaps the current postal crisis will change even that. I appreciate the opportunity to give you my take on the congressionally inflicted crisis that Postal Service employees and the corporation itself is enduring. I want to say, though, I do believe that this is the year to get a bill. I was told that there would be some video from the leaders of our committees in the House and Senate. I don't know if they have spoken to you yet. You certainly ought to be the first to know. Some of us have been trying to move toward a bill that would allow the Postal Service to grow and to sustain itself. To do this, we've had to prevail on some of our good Republican colleagues not to even try to move, to bring to the post office, the Postal Service, that dead-end strategy they are trying to impose on the economy and on the federal government, where you get only cuts, no growth, cutting your way to prosperity. Never happened in the history of governments or business, and it can't happen that way this time. I've been happy to serve on your committee and on your subcommittee for more than 20 years, ever since I've been in Congress. And I have seen, it's been my pleasure and my honor. So I have seen where you were, and I have seen what you have come through. It is quite a wonder to behold. Now, make no doubt about it, federal employees, the economy, and Postal Service employees have something in common. The Republicans, at least in the House, which is controlled by the Tea Party have Congress-inflicted wounds. Wounds that if you simply took them away, each would be doing better. After the stimulus, the Federal Reserve has been left alone to intervene to push the economy out of the recession into sustainability. That's not its job. That's the job of the Congress. Their job is to encourage employment and to control inflation. But they've been doing what they call quantitative easing simply to keep the economy going. So you see, we've gone from what is typically called a do-nothing Congress to a Congress that is inflicting real harm. The economy, for example, is now reacting to what the federal government and now the states are doing in cutting programs, cutting revenue in the midst of a recovery. Now, it's economics 101, that's the opposite of what you do in a recession or in a recovery. You have a recession, so you begin to pay down. But you want to do nothing that will slow a recovery. And history really has taught us that. If you read the history books, in 1937, the papers wrote that Roosevelt was now producing a Roosevelt depression. Why did they do that? Because Roosevelt got the kind of criticism that President Obama has been getting, that he was spending too much money. The Depression had already been relieved considerably, but there was still high unemployment. And because the conventional wisdom had always been the worst thing you want to do is to allow yourself to get a debt, he had so much pushback that he stopped spending. And the papers called him out. They say, now you're doing what they did, and you created your own depression.
Thank you for what you do. The Postal Service continues to be the vital link that binds our country together. Delivering mail to more than 150 million addresses and operating more than 32,000 post offices nationwide, the Postal Service continues to connect our families, our friends, communities, and businesses. Despite the financial challenges facing the Postal Service and the gridlock on Capitol Hill that has stymied comprehensive reform legislation, as I said before, you all continue to come to work every single day, giving your very, very best. And I, as ranking member, I'm constantly reminded of the limitations of the minority's power. And yet I realize that when it comes to crafting legislation to help the Postal Service, Congress's efforts have to be about something bigger, much bigger than partisan debate. Ladies and gentlemen, we got to be bigger than this. This is not about us. This is not about the next election. This is about a postal system that has existed for many, many years, and now it is our watch, and we must guard what we have. We must guard what we have, and I mean that, and you all are at the forefront of the guarding. And so we must set aside our partisan ideologies, to do something that is for the greater good of all our constituents and the country. And there's something that's going on in the Oversight Committee that upsets me to no end. It seems to be that anybody who does any public kind of work, that there's something wrong with them, that they make too much money, that they got too many benefits, that they don't pay enough into their pensions, that they got too much health insurance. I mean, over and over and over again. But you let that mail stop coming to the door. Or that check not showing up. And that's why whenever you watch me on C-SPAN, you will see me over and over and over again standing up for the people who are sitting in this room. Because I know that you are the glue that keeps this country together. You, and you. You are the glue. For too long, we have been mired in small. We have let ideology set the agenda, and we have now almost reached the point of standstill, a point which we seem unable to address our nation's most pressing problems. There used to be a time that Congress would not go out of session with looming problems over our heads. It seemed that that has become the norm. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come by to tell you that we're better than that. We're better than that. My father, who was a former sharecropper with a second grade education, very religious man, would often say either it is or it ain't. And he would say no matter how difficult the task, I'll never forget, he would rub his chin and he would say, "Let me see," said the blind man who couldn't see. And he would find a way to make it happen. That is the can-do attitude that we need to have in the Congress of the United States of America. We have to respect people. Sometimes I have to remind my colleagues, as they beat up on public employees, that we too are public employees. And so here we are in the midst of sequestration. And in our committee, they are having hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing to say that sequestration does not matter. That everything is nice, nobody's gonna suffer, but yet and still, on my staff, we've taken a 20% cut, and my staff is on furloughs. And I've been asked on my staff, for somebody making $45,000 a year, to not only have their salary frozen for 3 years. Hello. But then go on furloughs, but will not ask the rich to pay another dime. There's something awfully wrong with that picture. There's something wrong with that picture. Wow. The young lady in my office, the cost of giving a babysitter. They tell me I had a baby so long. Amen. The cost of having a babysitter is almost the cost of sending a child to college. So you're going to say to that lady who has 2 children, single mother, head of household, tell her, go freeze your salary for 3 years, and then go give you 2 furlough days a month. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something immoral about that. I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if it was not to give the rich more tax cuts. If everybody was sacrificed, I think everybody could join in happily. But when you ask the public employees to give, at some point they give up. And so, sequestration that recently took effect is a good example. It was intended to be so unacceptable to both parties that we would be forced to come together to negotiate reasonable compromise. Clearly this did not happen. As a result, we now risk slowing or even reversing the important gains we have recently made in economic growth and job creation. You all saw the recent job report. You all read the front pages a few days ago from the New York Times and the Washington Post, where they said that so many of our seniors now who have cancer are being turned away because of sequestration and the cost of administering chemotherapy. They tell them to go to the hospital. The hospitals can't handle them. And so, ladies and gentlemen, they die. You know, I ain't trying to sugarcoat anything. They die. I am telling you, we as a country, we are better than that. We really are. We're better than that. And we have to be the ones that stand up and say to the president, to the Congress, we got to do better. So this does not have to happen, and it's not what the American people voted for in November. That's not what I voted for. I didn't vote for gridlock. I, along with many other Americans, voted for everyone to come together to do what is best for our country and to recommit to the fundamental principle that we must focus our every effort on serving a cause bigger than ourselves. As you notice, I keep saying that bigger than ourselves, bigger than ourselves, bigger than ourselves, because I believe that when people get caught up in selfish motives and forget the big picture, the bigger world suffers. It's got to be about all of us. And so the same sentiments must be applied to the reform legislation for the postal system. Last Congress, there were numerous opportunities for Congress to address postal reform. The Senate led the way with its bipartisan bill that reforms postal service operations, addressed the pre-funding concerns,